Kohelet is Ecclesiastes, and it's a hard book to get to figure out what it's trying to tell us and what lessons we should take from it, and to make sense of it, and to figure out what the main message is. Number one, number two, why was it so problematic? So the main thing is, what's the main message and what's the structure? Those are the two things I want to focus on. So we figured out how to share screens here, so do that. And then I'm going to try to do a split screen. So can you see me still? Yeah. All right. One second. All right. So what I thought we'd do is go over Kohelet. We have like 20 minutes or so. I'll show you how this started. This started on a Shabbos. I don't know if you can see, but I just went through the Chumash. At the end, there's Kohelet, and I organized it based on color coordination. The different strands that I noticed in Kohelet, I highlighted with different tabs. And so this is kind of like the result of that. And what I want to show is that there are basically like 4 strands in Kohelet. And once you get that, then you can know how to read it, I think. And then you can also try to figure out what its message is. And there are different colors, strands. I'm not completely pleased with this title. It's kind of lazy, but it is what it is for now. Also, this is kind of like a work in progress still. I'm still trying to clean up the source sheet and stuff. And I'm also highlighting lessons I think are relevant for us today in the Corona period. So the main thing that they said, what usually said about Kohelet, the author, according to tradition, is Shlomo HaMelech. Now, people usually say, tradition, I've heard it said that he wrote Shir Shirim, the Song of Songs, when he was young. He was excited about life at that time. He was motivated and passionate, and everything was great. He was in love with everything. Then came Mishle, which is the book of Proverbs, where he started to think about things. And then Kohelet, when he was older, he realized things aren't as flowery and perfect as they were when he was younger. But I think a professor of mine once said this, and this is the kind of direction I'm going to go, that I want to present the order in a different way. Shir Shirim, Song of Songs was first. His young, unbridled love. Then maybe Kohelet. Kohelet could be his midlife crisis, where he thought everything was perfect. His dreams got shattered, but from there he emerged with a positive message about life, and then he started to develop a lot of wisdom in his later years in Proverbs. I think it's a nice way to take this. And I want to show you kind of like that crisis here and the message that emerges from it. Now, the sages did not want to originally include Kohelet in the canon, because it's kind of depressing if you read it. Just the first words here. Utter futility, all is futile. There's nothing new under the sun. He goes on, if you read it's futile. The whole book basically goes back and forth with a lot of rants of how bad things are and how pointless they are. All the blue in this source sheet, I basically have 4 colors here. All the blue is like kvetches. There's him. If you're interested in the source sheet, I can send it to you. All the blue is like him kind of kvetching, which I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's kind of like rants, like discomfort. I put it in blue because it's blue, it's sad. Like all the difficulty that he's experiencing with reality. So all this stuff, and there's contradictions in the book too. So the sages saw it and they didn't want to put it in the canon. In the end, they put it in the canon. And what's the reason why? The reason that's offered is this. The very end of the book, which is a 5th color really, is gray. It's the only time I brought it in, which he ends the book with this. After all the kvetching, all the back and forth, all the struggles, I don't use kvetching as like a negative term, but the sum of the matter, when all is said and done, revere God, observe his commandments, for this is all of mankind. Zek kol adam. It could be, this is the whole of the individual. That God will call every creature to account for everything unknown, be it good or bad. Sum of the matter, when all is said and done, revere God, observe his commandments, for this is This is to all mankind. This is kol adam. So it's a from ending. It ends accepting God's judgment and accepts that there's direction, and accepts that we should accept all the normative directives of Judaism, and it ends that way. So everything else could have been his deliberations, his struggles, but in the end, this is the message of the book. So the sages, according to what's taught, they allowed it in the canon due to that. But I want to offer another direction, that there's like other positive messages you can lift from this book, and I think they can be informative for us today. So let's go back a little bit to the beginning. Bereshit. Okay, so I just want to read together with you just the first 2 chapters. When we read this in shul, we read this kind of quickly, and it's hard to follow what's going on. So we can just read it. It's kind of easy to understand. The first chapter opens up. The words of Kohelet, son of David. So that will be Shlomo Melech. Utter futility, say Kohelet. There's another participant coming in. I don't know what they're in. Hi, Natalie. Utter futility. All is futile. What real value is there for a man and all he gains beneath the sun? So what value is there in anything we do? One generation goes, another generation comes, but the earth remains the same forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, and glides back to where it rises, right? So this could hint to a few different things. One is things just keep happening. We don't have control over them all around us. It could also be that we're all going to, I mean, it's kind of like a sad thought, but we're all going to die. When we die, everything's going to keep going on. I've thought about this before. This kind of like, I had like I don't know, midlife, I don't know, like in my late 30s, I had like a few, like over a summer, I had like a lot of introspection on things, and like that kind of brought, it kind of made me sad. It made me think at that time when I just realized like there aren't many people that we're like, we have Yizkor, we're doing Yizkor tonight in shul. Not that many people are remembered. Like I can't, even my family from 4 generations ago, only certain people get remembered in history, like presidents or important people. But many of us, like all the things that are extremely important for us, the world's going to keep going with us and after us. And when you think about that, that can make you kind of sad. Maybe that's what he's thinking about here. Meaning he was so excited in the beginning of his life. He's starting to think about life in a deeper way. Southward blowing, turning northward, ever turning blows the wind. On its round, the wind returns. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place to which they flow, the streams flow back again. Like, all this stuff just keeps going on. Another piece that I was going to say before is he also could be hiding to the fact that like things don't change that much. Like maybe when he was younger, he thought everything was going to be amazing. I don't know, like when you're younger and you go to university. Sometimes I teach in university campuses. I'm always amazed that the kids, I guess I'm like that old that I can say that, but like they're excited, they're investigating, everything's fresh and new. I don't know if you remember back from your college years when you first went to college, it's like everything's open. You could try this out, you could take that course. Who knows what life's going to be like? Everything's exciting, everything's open. You get in your flow of life, in your profession, and things unfold, and sometimes you can feel like things just happening over and over again. Maybe he was going through that himself. And I want to add, like for our days, and I think this is why I'm highlighting this piece, that I think like in our days, it seems like day after day after day just keep passing by. And sometimes you can feel overwhelmed, drained, and just bored, and lose hope. And you don't know when what end is in sight. Although like politicians try to say like it's going to end at this time, but you don't know. And so you can get in this mode, in this funk, this Groundhog Day. If anyone's seen that movie, that kind of funk where it's like day after day after day. And I think that in that headspace, it's worth thinking about the message of Kohelet, because this is him kind of expressing his struggles. But we're going to see that there's another message that emerges, what to do with all that. So I'm just reading a little bit more. No man can ever, only that shall happen which has happened, only that occur which has occurred. There is nothing new beneath the sun. Sometimes there's a phenomenon which they say, look, this one is new. It occurred long since, in ages that went by before us. One of my professors once said, like all of philosophy is like footnotes to Plato and Aristotle. I don't know. Nothing's new. It's all remakes of old things. The earlier ones are not remembered, so too those that will occur later that we no more remember than those that will occur at the very end. So that's the first opening of the book. That's how a book of Tanakh opens. It's pretty amazing, that beginning. I mean, just imagine that. Like, let's say a rabbi opened up his drasha like that, or went on an interview to become a rabbi in a synagogue and started his drasha in that way. Like, they definitely wouldn't take him as their rabbi. I'm happy I didn't do that. About the fellow with the purses there. All right, so then he steps back, and this is the only time I bring this color pink, but you could find it in other places. Basically, I just brought this to highlight the fact that this kind of highlights that he went on a search for an answer. So again, Shir Shirim started out his life excited, enthusiastic, full of love and passion. Then maybe went through this like midlife crisis, and then decided to probe. And here are different things he tried to probe and try out to find meaning and purpose. So first he said, I'm going to try with wisdom. And so he says, so he concludes, as wisdom grows, vexation grows. To increase learning is to increase heartache. So the answer wasn't there. So he tried to seek in other places. It's like he tries to seek happiness. You know, it's maybe in the midlife crisis. I'm not comparing these at all, but like, you know, you have that guy, that older gentleman who'll get the sports car trying to find a happiness, or like where you rediscover the youth or something like that. And he says, of merriment, but he concluded, what good is that? I venture to tempt my flesh with wine, to grasp folly. So he figured, like, I'll just figure out maybe happiness is the answer. That's what I can grasp. Let my mind direct with wisdom to the end that I might learn which of the two is better for men to practice in their few days of life under heaven. But that didn't work. So he went to multiply his possessions. Maybe I'll go and start multiple businesses and make a lot of money, and that's going to bring me happiness. And that's like a common theme in Jewish texts, that doesn't do the trick. For that, will maybe so he goes, my thought also turned to praising wisdom and madness and folly. And so here it goes back to wisdom. And then he got into, I loathed all the wealth. So again, it's wisdom, wealth, and there was one more here, and happiness. So those are like the three he kept. Like, if you think about it, he was a king. He had wisdom at his hands, with connections with all kings and princes around the world. Wealth at his hands, with happiness. He could have lavish feasts whenever he wanted. So perhaps he was experimenting with what he had at hand. In the end, though, those didn't work. And here is the crazy solution that people like don't highlight as much, because they highlight the ending that I showed you. But this theme, if you just take a look, this green theme, maybe you'll read it now, but maybe not. Here, green, 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 and green. Okay, so and green. It surfaces maybe 7 times, and surfaces maybe 7 times, and it's all the same idea. Now, if we can get this idea, perhaps we can understand what Kohelet wants from us. So here's what he says. After all that, the search, he comes to a conclusion. There's nothing worthwhile for man but to eat and drink and afford himself enjoyment with his means. So if you read this, it kind of sounds like what he said with amassing wealth, but it just kind of sounds hedonistic if you just read it. Because it's the whole point of this book. Eat and drink and enjoy yourself. Eat, drink, and be happy. And be merry, whatever. Even that I know that comes from God. For he eats and for who eats and who enjoys but myself. To the man, namely, who pleases himself, he has given the wisdom and shrewdness to enjoy himself, and to him who displeases, he has given the urge to gather and amass, only for handing on to one who is pleasing to God. That too is futile and pursuit of wind. Anyway, the thing I want to highlight here, there's 2 pieces to this. I think this is like the one of the main messages of the book, is that amidst all of this that's going on around us, the day after day after day, and we're going to see he's going to complain about and other struggles and other difficulties, but he's also going to talk about like oppression that he sees all around us, and that can also be compared to our times in the sense that seeing all the all the pain and hurt and death that's all around us today, you can look at these things and you can lose your hope, and you can also just be overwhelmed by the monotonous day after day of our situation right now. So his answer to that, I think, is this: is that eat, drink, and enjoy the moments you have, and be grateful for what you have. And each one, people don't pay attention to this, and this is the piece I want to highlight. He says here, each time, he brings God in almost each time. And I think that's so important. This idea that eat, drink, enjoy what you're doing now in the present, and see it as a blessing and a kindness from God. And that's the theme that's going to keep repeating itself. So if you look at the next one of these, this I realize, and so people don't always get this. They just see the eat and drink and they think that's the story of Kohelet. And it's like, what's the point of this book? So I realized that the only worthwhile thing there is for them is to enjoy themselves and do what is good in their lifetime. So you would say, okay, just enjoy yourself. That's the whole purpose of the book. That whenever a man does eat and drink and gets enjoyment out of his wealth, it is a gift of God. That's so beautiful to see everything we have as a gift of God. And I think that's like one of the things I'm focusing on. There's many things to think about nowadays that we can do to imbue meaning into our like everyday kind of like cycle that we're in. But one of them is to really, really, really reflect on what we have, on the blessings that we have. And maybe we're being forced to do this. We're forced in our homes. We're forced around the most basic of things that we have. And all of the peripheral stuff has been taken away from us. All the fun outings, all the shows, everything, all the gatherings, all we had, the ones we love, the food that we have, our shelter, and our clothing. That's all we have right now. Maybe it's to help us focus on that, appreciate it, and enjoy it. Enjoy those things and be grateful for them. If we can strengthen ourselves in those pieces and get strong in those areas, we can be strong when we emerge. And this is, I think, one of the main messages of the desert experience in the Torah. There's a question that I ask often, I give this to our Torah in different settings, but why does the Torah not have a happy ending? The Jews never make it out of Egypt, never make it out of the desert. It's the worst novel ever. I mean, not the worst novel, but it's not the best novel in the sense they usually have a happy ending. They get out of Egypt, there's a climax, they emerge from Egypt, and the rest of the book, 80%, around 70% of the book, the rest of the book is them traveling in circles, and it just ends. And Moses dies, and that's the end of the story. What's the purpose of the book? One of the ways I explain it is that the Torah isn't necessarily a novel. It's a guide for how to deal in the desert, how to be grateful for what you have when you don't have everything that you have. And if the Jews have that guide, they can be good. They can succeed no matter where they are. They can succeed in Eretz Israel. They can succeed in the Gullus and the exile. So that's why that's kind of like the message I think that we have here. And perhaps this is what we're being forced to recognize and to like really internalize in these times. I think that's like something to focus on. So I want to just show you the other strands in the book and other things that he highlights. So if we go up again to where we were. So again, here, this is a chapter 3. Again, this is him. This is the blue. So this is him kind of like expressing his frustrations or things that trouble him. But if you read this, this might sound familiar to you. A time for this, a time for that. A time, ta-da, a time, ta-da. This is, that song was taken from Kohelet. But it's not such a happy, it's in blue. So what you're saying, Rabbi, why is it in blue? It's a happy song. It's actually not so happy in its original context. They cut and pasted it for the means of that song, for the purpose of that song. It ends like this. As there's a set season for this, a set season for that, a time for this, a time for that, a time for laughing, a time for dancing. Then it ends like this. They didn't add this into the song. Just curious, is it the birds that sing that song? Okay. So at the end he says, what value then can man of affairs get from what he earns? Meaning, there's a time for this, a time for that. So what part do we play in it all? That's actually the reason why he brought this song. It's again expressing like that never-ending cycle and wondering what part we play. So here, I've observed the business that God gave man to be concerned with. He brings everything to pass precisely at its time. He also put eternity in their mind. But without man ever guessing from first to last, all the things that God brings to without man ever guessing from first to last, all the things that God brings to pass. So all these things God brings to pass, what part do we play in it all? That's actually the reason why this song is brought, that those verses are brought in Kohelet. So again, then he comes back to this idea in green. I'm just showing you the structure of the book. And again, we have blue again, which is things recur evermore. I'm just kind of giving you a general bird's eye view of this. Our fate is the fate of the beast. Everyone just dies, and similar to us. And then he goes back to enjoy your possessions. Enjoy what you have. Then here's another thing that he struggles with, oppression. So I connected that, the red, I made it red. That's connected perhaps to, we can connect that to like all the things, all the horrible things that are going around. It's not necessarily humans oppressing other humans, but it's more just like the problem of evil that's going on around us, in that evil things are happening to people. So I'm just showing you other things here. Now, another thing I just want you to know about, if you read Kohelet, there's a wisdom strand. So I would call like the green strand, like the enjoyment strand. I don't know exactly. The green one would be being the gratitude strand, let's say, or the enjoyment strand. The blue one would more be like the struggle strand, or the I don't know what the venting strand. I don't know. And the yellow one is the wisdom strand. And this is another solution. And I think this is kind of like perhaps his later personality, if you accept the model of Shir Shirim first, Kohelet second, and then Proverbs third. This is the wisdom strand emerging, which will take full force in his later life, where he's basically trying to, although he accepted that things are the way they are, we have to find meaning in our reality. And that's this strand, trying to find ways to understand reality and follow proper guidance. So the yellow is just him. It's like all kinds of proverbs. Be not overeager to go to the house of God. More acceptable is obedience than the offering of fools. So if you really pay attention, I don't think I made up this strand. I really think it's here. Look, just as dreams of much brooding, so does foolish utterance come with speech. It's not him necessarily venting, and it's not him saying how we should be grateful. It's more just expressing words of wisdom. And this is interspersed at different parts of the book. So when you come across them, it kind of stands out. But if you know that they're there, you can learn from them and like put them in proper perspective. So I'm just showing you a little bit of this. I'll show you another yellow strand. This is further down. Another one. A good name is better than fragrant oil. In the day of death, better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting. The end of the matter is better than the beginning. I'm just showing you, is it similar to Proverbs? Wisdom. So this is his wisdom. This is the yellow strand, so it stretches. Here's here's like the oppression that he highlights. And again, I'm just going to return another time to the green strand. This is the gratitude strand, let's say. I therefore praised enjoyment. For only good a man can have under the sun is to eat and drink and enjoy himself. If you stop there, then that sounds hedonistic, but that much can accompany him in exchange for his wealth through the days of his life that God has granted him under the sun. So God is always brought into the green strand. So I think that's beautiful, and I think that's an important message for us. Again, here's another green strand, and that's basically the book, yeah, in like 25 minutes. But here's another yellow strand, which is like a wisdom strand. And basically, there's three strands, how I see it, three of them going back and forth, which is the wisdom, maybe like his struggles with how things are, and the gratitude strand. And I think the wisdom strand also can inform us today. And the last strand, which is like the normative one, which is the religious one at the end. I think these three strands, you have the blue, which is like everything we're going through, and we're all feeling it. Then you have the green one, which is I think like the main message, which is keeps repeating itself over and over again, to really focus on the blessings that we have. And we're being forced to do that now and seize that opportunity. The yellow strand hints to like trying to find meaning in the reality that we're in, imbuing it with purpose and meaning. Although we don't necessarily know what the reason for everything is, we can try to find meaning and purpose. And so that's the yellow strand. And the last thing is try to grow spiritually, which is the gray one at the end, and observe God's commandments in the Torah and keep progressing on a spiritual level. So I think this book kind of like highlights that, like the cycle and like the tough times that we're in. And I think it'll offer some guidance for us in that reality. Thanks for joining me